recorded and subject to monitoring at any time. Thank you for using IC Solutions. You may begin speaking now.
I don't consent to the recording of my call except by Mr. Rudy. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Mike. I did reach out to the Handle on the Law guy, and I sent him information about your case. I don't know that he'll respond, but I did send him the information, and I found an article written about your wife, and I mailed that to you just for you to comment. But you know, these bastards in the DOJ, they write up a bunch of lies. I mean, nothing surprises me anymore as far as the depth of their corruption.
Where was the article written from? Where was it published?
I think it's on the DOJ website.
Really?
Yeah, they write articles on almost every arrest they make, and you'll see it when you get it. But I've seen other articles for other political prisoners as well, like Schaeffer and others. So I think every time they target anybody, they always write up like some sort of news account of what they think is going on. But it's all propaganda and BS.
Yeah, definitely. It's nothing but propaganda, trying to taint the opinions of the people. And, I read the articles. There was one in Vancouver that was talking about that, and I read on the CovingtonLeader.com that I referenced in that update letter that I sent out.
Yep.
And I read that, and if you look at the information and you compare it to the indictment against Weaverick, you're going to find that they're accusing Weaverick of actually giving the address of the sheriff, actually giving them access to an airplane for transportation, facilitating that. And he's charged with something that he can get 3 years if he's convicted, and he's fighting it because it's bogus. He's never spent a day in jail. He's basically out on his own recognizance because he's got a lawyer that's fighting for him. And at the end of the day, the charges, he goes to trial in January, they're probably going to be dismissed because he had no intent, and it's all about intent. What is your intent? Under the charges that they're charging them, you had to have an intent of a conspiracy to do something. They didn't have an intent to do nothing. They get a call from a company, a business that says, we're a fugitive recovery business. Okay, now the news articles, they try to twist that and say, in common parlance, it's a bounty hunter. See, they try to twist it into something to make it sound idiotic.
Right.
Like backwoods Bubba.
Yeah.
They're trying to paint us as backwoods Bubbas, when in fact we're following the law. And when you get somebody that calls you and says they work for a fugitive recovery company, telling you that they've got a legal court order, you assume that they're in the business that's legitimate, that they're doing a legitimate job, then everything is on the up and up. And, even the comment that they claimed that Mrs. Parsons said, I don't want the FBI knocking on my door, that means she doesn't want to be involved in anything criminal.
Right. No, yeah, I completely understand. And their entrapment techniques, it's so outrageous. Most people don't understand how corrupt the FBI has become.
They don't, because they haven't dealt with it personally, and they don't listen to the alternative radio to hear the tragedies. They listen to mainstream media, baseball, football, distractions, and they never hear what's really going on.
Yeah.
They're not, and that's by design. I was going to mention to you.
Okay, so I'm sorry. Go ahead. I just want to let when I reached out to Handle on the Law, he didn't have an email address. He had like a contact form, so it only limited me to a certain amount of characters. It was very kind of restrictive, right? But I did send him your website. I sent him a YouTube playlist so he could listen to your calls from prison, and I sent him information about your case and the entrapment of your wife. But one thing I noticed on his website is he doesn't have a mailing address, because I was going to give you a mailing address so you could mail a letter to him yourself as well, but he doesn't advertise any sort of mailing address. So I did what I could with his website, his contact form, but some of these guys, they limit the way that you can contact them, so it is what it is.
Well, right, and his is a radio talk show, and he's got a segment, he says on there, where he's got a a bunch of lawyers all across the country that do all kinds of stuff. Well, Mrs. Parsons went to his website and she looked to see there's not a single lawyer in Memphis listed.
Wow.
And that doesn't surprise me because he says I've got a very strict, guideline. I don't let anybody on here, but those people there, none of these people that I've got are going to be the type that'll just ask you for a bunch of money and then sit back and do nothing. They're not going to ask you for a penny up front, period.
Right.
So you're going to know that if they're going to work, they're going to earn their money and they're going to do what they're supposed to do. They're not shyster lawyers. I was thinking about tomorrow. I don't know if you talked to Pastor Manning, but I was thinking that if he wants to present the information, I don't know if you want to read that update to the Patriots, but also I noticed, because that lists what's going on right now with Pat. And the update to the Patriots, I think, is a fairly decent letter. And it ends with talking about the solution. The solution is we the people stand up and we take back this country and we stop this tyranny. That's what it takes, is people being aware of what's going on and everybody standing up together, and that's what stops it. And I reference the win-win-win, which is Trump's motto, because in my ministry, trying to help these people stand on their own feet, take responsibility for themselves, which allows them to get their children back. That's a win-win-win. They get jobs, they get their children back. The Tennessee, company gets to make good profits for their company, helping them manage the logging operation, and one less group of people are being dependent upon a government, which is a corporation posing as government. Other than that, on this letter that I wrote to a young man named Logan, I just put his first name. I'm not sure if I think he's somewhere around 10. I didn't really get his age, but the way he writes, I'm anticipating he's, probably in about the 4th or 5th grade, maybe. On that letter, I think I sent you a copy of it, or Pat did, emailed it. On line 9, I say, in reference to him, I see a reference to Christ as our Savior, but remember, if we are true followers of Christ, our demonstration of that would be to expose and overturn evil and corruption as Christ did in his time. Sadly, the corporate government and the 501c3 churches are businesses focused on money, power, and control. As Christ, I too know the cost of walking as he did. Today is no different than in the days of Christ. Caesar, the government, demands two things. In Christ's days, it was that everybody declare Caesar as Lord and pay taxes. Today, it is the government that demands everybody declare that they are the authority and pay taxes. That word Lord has been defined many ways, including creator of the universe, ruler, and ultimate authority. The word sovereign has the same definitions. In an effort to steal the power from the people who originally created the government to those running the government, they had to demonize the idea of the people being sovereign. The term sovereign citizen was created by the FBI to do just that.
Yeah, that's good, Mike. That's very, very powerful. And they are trying to demonize sovereign citizens. You're absolutely right. And they're trying to set themselves up above God. There's no doubt about that as well.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, in Schaeffer's trial, the prosecutor, when he was arguing in sentencing phase, he said that Schaeffer is one of those people that believes God's law is higher than man's law. Therefore, he's harder to rehabilitate. Therefore, he should spend a longer time in prison. I mean, we actually have that audio of him saying that.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So the First Amendment goes out the window. Freedom of religion has just been stomped on because you don't put man as a god. You don't make man a god. This man is he's an antichrist, anti-God, Luciferian. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Well, these people in the Department of Justice and the FBI and, the higher levels of government, they've become godless, right? They've thrown God out in the window and they put man. But, they don't have any God, and they put man as God, and it's terrible because there are those of us that know that God exists, we have a relationship with him, and we're never going to. The Bible says that it is better to obey God than to please man. But on a change in the topic just a bit, but we did also send all your information to Daniel Brigman. He did respond back, we even left him a voicemail. I remember calling him with your wife, and we left a voicemail on his phone. So I don't know if he's extremely busy these days, or we're doing what we can, Mike. But I got to tell you, my experience has been it's very difficult to get cases like this out in front of the public so that it gets a lot of attention. I mean, we have a small YouTube channel. We're doing what we can with that. But these alternative medias, it's very challenging to get these stories out, and it's not just your story. There's other innocent men as well that are sitting in prison, and people just don't. I don't know what the deal is. I mean, I don't know the answer. I mean, we're just constantly looking for the right place to, get attention to some of these cases. But all we can do is just keep plugging and have faith.
That's it. That's all we can do, and it's up to each one to decide what they will and won't do to help the fellow man. I know that Daniel is very busy. They've just gone from an AM to an afternoon schedule, and there's some issues about that. I think he was forced out for some reason, possibly by Genesis, because he's not going to have the same audience, and there's a lot of conflicts with going to the afternoon, but they got somebody claiming they're the Power Hour now in that same time slot doing a health and wellness type program. But he's been talking about the case out there in Utah, I guess it is, with the Bundys, and and he's put a lot of effort into explaining how these people are true American hero patriots for standing up for their God-given rights to be on their land, left alone, and the federal government's coming in and trying to, destroy them because they're not willing to give up their land so that some foreign interest can come in and take it and sell it for the mining of uranium or whatever the purpose is. But otherwise, it's just a matter of an overreach of a federal government that has absolutely no authority whatsoever. And, and he has Sheriff Mack on there. And I wish I could get what this associate warden said to Sheriff Mack, because this guy said, and I asked him, what is your definition of a sovereign citizen? He said, quote, someone that believes that the local county sheriff is a higher authority than the federal government.
Yeah, I'm always under the impression that is the case. So call me a sovereign citizen if that's his definition.
Well, anybody that recognizes their inherent God-given rights. Their rights come from God, not from man, and that's what scares the hell out of these people, is that you don't bow, and it's what I read in that letter. If you don't bow your knee and declare man as Lord, creator of the universe, which is the definition of Lord and sovereignty, then you got to die.
Yeah.
That and pay taxes, which means you got to, like a burglar coming to your house and say, here's the deal. I'm not going to take much right now, but every so often you got to give me some more. Otherwise, I'm going to come back and kill you. And, oh, by the way, I got an army of bureaucrats behind me. So you got the force of the state behind these. I don't want to say that.
Yeah.
But they've got a standing army to come after you, and the people in charge are sitting there silent.
Yeah.
And therein lies the problem. We didn't hire these people to enslave us, but yet here I am. Haven't heard anybody, and I've been locked up for going on almost a year now.
1 minute remaining.
And looking at my wife also being railroaded for nothing, for being framed, and it ought not be that way, not in a free country. And I know that God bless you for your platform and the efforts that you put into helping us.
Yeah, we're not going anywhere, Mike. Have you been getting our letters? Have they followed you from the Tennessee prison?
I've gotten 2 letters from you with letters from other people.
Okay, all right. I sent you some more too.
But yeah, I appreciate these. I don't want you to waste a lot of money on that. I'm very grateful for you taking the time to put money on the phone and take my calls. And I know that I don't know you know, I'm a fighter. I'm going to try to beat this. I just don't know if they put my wife in a cage, that you know, we can only take so much.
Yeah, I understand, Mike. It ended. You know, what I was going to say before it hung up is if we can get his case popular enough, then some of these alternative media folks like Handle on the Law or Daniel Brigman, they'll want to cover the case. But I think it has to reach a certain threshold for them to want to pay attention to it so that it becomes an interesting of interest to a large group of people. So that's the goal, is to get it to that level. But I really do think what's happening to Mike and what's going to happen to Mrs. Pat Parsons tomorrow is absolutely tragic. It's absolutely tragic. But and time is of the essence because she's going to be sentenced tomorrow, and she could face 5 to 20 years. I don't think she should spend a day in prison. I think what the FBI did to her is absolutely evil and corrupt. But we'll keep both of them in our prayers, and we'll keep trying to promote their case.
To accept this call, press or say 5. To refuse this call, hang up now. This call will be recorded and subject to monitoring at any time. Thank you for using IC Solutions. You may begin speaking now.
I won't take long. I just wanted to say that if you have an opportunity to share any information with Pastor Manning, do you have that update letter that I sent?
What's the name of it? Because there's been so many, it's going to be hard to identify the specific one you're referring to.
Okay, it's a printed letter, front and back. It's one page, and it says, "Greetings, fellow Americans, patriots, and followers of Christ.
Yes.
The following is an update to the never-ending attack upon my family." Okay, and the very last line on the back page says, "That's why now we're all real Americans again."
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure I can find that. The challenge that I've got with the show is I don't even know if I'm going to be on tomorrow. It's kind of I'm always on standby at the last minute, and when he contacts me, sometimes he'll have it's very loosely organized, right? So sometimes he'll have a topic he wants to talk about, and sometimes he don't. So we'll see what happens. But if I do get on, I am going to mention your website. I'll mention the letter. I'm sure we've read the letter into YouTube already. We've got quite a extensive playlist that's been created, and so we'll try to call that specific video out where it's been read. But the goal is, Mike, is some of these alternative medias, not Pastor Manning per se, but maybe like the Daniel Brigmans and the Handle on the Law guy. I don't know him all that well, but if we can generate enough interest so that there's, like the Bundys got enough interest across the country where it was beneficial for the alternative medias to cover it because their audience was, if we can do the same thing for you, at least get it to a threshold where there's enough people that know about your case, know about the atrocities, that people want to know more, it becomes in the best interest of the alternative media to cover it in detail and maybe even to have you on the show. But that's kind of what we're shooting for. And, of course, we have your wife in our prayers for what's going to happen tomorrow. I know that it's got to be tough, man. It's got to be tough knowing that your wife is going to go before that. I don't even want to say what I think about that judge because, I just have no faith whatsoever in our judicial system. But we pray that God moves the heart of that judge so that she's very, very lenient on your wife.
Yeah, I don't know anything about this judge other than I think Mrs. Parsons looked up and she was appointed by Barack Obama in 2014. So I guess she's been there for a little over 3 years, and but I don't know her temperament or character and anything at all. I mean,
yeah.
So.
Well, I pray she can see through what really went on and then how it was. This FBI entrapment is really out of hand. There's a book written about it. It's called The Terror Factory, and how the FBI manufactures terror cases across this country. It really focuses on the Muslim community, but they're doing exactly the same thing, to Christian patriots and calling them domestic terrorists and sovereign citizens and things like that.
There was a lady that was arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit murder and all this stuff. The guy that was killed and charged with shooting all those people at that gay nightclub in Florida, his wife was also framed and falsely arrested and charged by the Justice Department. And somehow or another, she had some legal help, and she wasn't kept in jail, and she got the charges dismissed. But she had legal help, and I don't know who that legal help was. Don't know who she had or how she got it or whatever, but she got the charges against her dismissed.
Okay. Interesting.
But I don't know if you remember that gay nightclub where they say that a lone guy went in there and shot up the place.
Yep.
And he was working as a security detail. He was a former cop working as security detail, and there was some kind of a deal going on where he thought he was part of the raid or something. And then, from what one person said on the Power Hour, is that the SWAT team went in and machine gunned everybody and killed him at the same time, and then blamed it on him.
Interesting. You know, there's so much false flags and so much corruption in these media events, these mass shootings, that I don't believe anything I hear from the media anymore. I just don't, because they lied to us.
Like Daniel Brigman said, he doesn't believe anything now. And then the guy that had the shooting out there in Las Vegas, where they claim one guy that was a gambler and a collector and a former IRS agent, you know, fat and happy, made lots of money. Supposedly he's going to go postal and shoot all these people. But if you listen to the audio, you can hear different firings from different machine guns.
Right.
Alex Jones said one sounds like a belt-fed 30 caliber machine gun, has a distinctive sound, and the bump stock doesn't work like that, where you can get a consistent rhythm like that. It's intermittent. And
yeah, I've fired bump stocks myself, and so I know exactly what you're saying is true. And Steve Pachinik, are you familiar with him? He's a guest on Alex Jones from time to time.
Yep.
He puts forward the idea, and again, I don't know, but he puts forward the idea that nobody died in Las Vegas, and that it's all an attempt to take our firearms. Man, I just don't know anymore. But I don't believe anything the media tells us, and we're just lied to so much. It's like I don't know what to believe. I know the Bible's true. I put my faith in that. But all this stuff on mass media and all these shootings, man, they lie to us so much it ain't even funny.
Well, yeah, and the Sandy Hook deal, there's a guy that wrote a book called No One Died in Sandy Hook, and he was on with Joyce several times, and he pointed out that, one of the kids that they claimed that they had a funeral for, they had a photograph of him in another assassination thing over in Europe somewhere. So they keep using these same, as they call them, cutouts, sock puppets, and he said he challenged to say that the guy's not dead, and that did he even ever exist? And they're trying to find proof of this. Is there a birth certificate? Is there anybody that knew him? And a lot of people, like out in Las Vegas, one guy that came forward and said that there were multiple shooters at multiple locations, and he went on someplace and talked about it. Well, he had a car wreck. There's been a lot of car wrecks lately of people who are eyewitnesses.
Yeah.
So that's how they like to get rid of people. And in my case, the former county attorney, Duke Brassfield in Tipton County, he was at the country club and made the statement, "You're going to rue the day you railroaded Mike Parsons, because he's not going to stop fighting. He's not going to roll over, and somebody's going to listen to him, and they're going to come in here and investigate, and all y'all going to prison." 2 weeks later, the official story was he ran through a stop sign, hit a tree head on, and fire ensued from his brand new 2012 Cadillac Escalade blowing up, and he died in the fire. Well, the guy that worked at the prison told me that his nephew worked as a sheriff's deputy in Fayette County where it happened, and said the back end of his Escalade was crushed in, looked like a dump truck, shoved it into that tree, and he said there were skid marks for almost 200 feet where he'd locked up the brakes. And, oh, by the way, there's an automatic fuel safety shutoff so that if you have a front-end collision, it shuts off the fuel pump so you don't get fuel coming out. And just the whole thing of it, where he says something and immediately he dies.
Yeah.
And then the DA, Mike Donovan, the guy that's pursuing me, his wife died in a mysterious wreck. The story was that she left the country club, and her friend was driving the DA's car, and they rolled over, and his wife died. And so they prosecuted this lady as responsible for the death of the DA's wife. Well, the official story is not necessarily what people on the scene said. People on the scene, including EMS and other people, said that Mike Donovan got there shortly after the wreck, that it looked like that the car had lost control and that his wife was in the driver's seat in a seatbelt, and that he moved her over to the passenger seat, and that this Miss Caldwell was a family friend, and after everything was over, Miss Caldwell would come over to the Donovan house and babysit his son. So the question I ask is, would you really let the woman responsible for the death of your child's mother babysit that child?
Wow.
No.
Yeah, there's something very strange about that man. I mean, he's got to be an absolute devil if he's the one going after Mrs. Parsons and also yourself. And the fact he's getting promoted.
He is just, yes, he has just been, and Trump didn't know. Trump's, got to fill a position. He got a referral by a rhino Republican. And that's what happens. You get these people that come in the back door, and he is a hardcore Democrat, Republican, Clintonista. He's an establishment kind. He'll do whatever. He's a tool.
Yeah.
He's nothing but a tool. When I campaigned in 2006, his booth was right beside mine, and for like 5 weeks we sat there at these rallies, and I made helium balloons, gave them to his wife and his son with my campaign information and stuff, and we talked for a while. And I see them as just normal, everyday people, no big deal. But you never know what goes on behind the scenes. The people at the scene said that his wife was driving, that she was drunk, and that she lost control and wrecked the car. But it wouldn't do for the DA's wife to have died in a wreck that she herself was responsible for drunk driving. So that would look bad for him. So they created this ruse that it was the other woman responsible. They got an outside DA to come in to prosecute, and at the end of the day, charges were dropped. She never went to jail.
Wow, incredible. Hey, Mike, on another thing I wanted to share. So going forward, right? I read this article and I mailed it to you, and getting to know you like I do, and how outspoken you are, and you're very bold, even from prison cell, right? And there's other prisoners that are in your mold, right? They're very bold and they speak the truth, and they don't have any fear at all, and I can sense that in you. Your wife, on the other hand, is she's a very lovely woman. I've talked to her on the phone a few times, and I get the impression she's not bold, right? She's not, and maybe it's because she's right before sentencing too. That's a very heavy burden that she's carrying around on her shoulders. But she's not going to be out an outspoken fighter, even though that she was a target of this terrible setup by the FBI. And the challenge that I think we're going to have is depending on what happens tomorrow, whether, hopefully she gets nothing and they let her loose, and, because of the judge can see through all the BS that's came against her. My concern is because she's not so bold and she's not going to speak up, and she's probably got a serious amount of terror, of what's happening to her. It's going to be hard to get her story out. And so, when you read what happened to her with the article I sent, I'm going to be like looking to you to kind of fill in the gaps on what's truthful and what's not in that article. It's just and I'm not saying anything negative against Miss Parsons. It's just the typical women don't stand up against this horrific government, and a lot of people just lay down and say they don't want to fight because they're so overpowering. And so we're going to be looking, to you to kind of know what's the real story is, and to separate the truth from the lies.
Well, we've been together for 33 years, and I can tell you without any hesitation that she is the most honest and caring individual I've ever met. She is the kindest lady on the planet. I know for a fact she would never do anything that she thought was illegal.
Yep.
Never.
Right.
She is not going to do anything, be involved with anything, nothing. And I'm the same way. I'm not doing anything illegal. The fact is that I've got an international court that has exonerated me of these bogus charges from 2009. Is that, there's actually a nation out there that's not a corporation. They've got their own court. They approached me because they discovered how I was willing to fight on my own without being a lawyer or anything, but their Supreme Court justice read through my transcript and said, this is ridiculous. You've demonstrated how everything they put up against you was a lie. You supported everything factually and proved that you were attacked without provocation. Your wife was shot at, you were shot at, your dog was shot and killed. And the guy's mad because you're suing his buddy.
1 minute remaining.
And then they railroad you into prison when you have no criminal history and there's no injuries to anybody. And the courts just totally ignored it, but yet you kept pursuing it nonstop. And that's the thing. These are hardcore criminals that we're dealing with in these courts, and it's a rigged game. And
yep.
so they took on my case without any charge and reviewed it and set up a hearing. Tennessee didn't show up, and they exonerated me of the false charges. And from an international court, it's superior to this court's corporate system. If you go by international law, it is superior.
Amen, yeah. Well, I have no faith whatsoever. The only power these court systems have in America is the confidence of the people, and they're losing that even, because everybody's starting to see through the BS of our court systems. But you're in our prayers, Mike, and so is Pat for tomorrow.
Well, talk to Pastor Manning if you can, and if there's any opportunity with him or Daniel, please,
Yeah, we definitely will. It cut him off right in mid-sentence, but, we'll just do the best that we can. It is absolutely horrific.